Okay, great. So housekeeping wise, spring break next week, so no class. Then I'll meet with the Wednesday group the week after spring break. So you guys are off from here for 2 full weeks, as far as having to show up to class. I feel like the video lectures are going better technology wise. We're getting, not losing as much stuff. And it seems like you guys are doing fine on your quizzes and staying on top of your work. So hopefully you're not feeling like this class is overloading you, because it shouldn't be. It seems to be pretty straightforward, I guess. So hopefully you guys feel that way. We'll have another exam coming up, but I think it's in 3 weeks, I believe. So,
Is that a final?
no, it's just another. I think we're doing 3 exams, so it'll be number 2, and then you'll do 1 more in your finals week. Okay. So I think that's about it, really. Got a couple people missing a couple assignments, but not you 3. So, and then we need to figure out how we want to do your presentation, Frank, with you switching groups. How far have you gotten along with these guys? You want to wait and just join up with a group when you go on Wednesday?
That's real. How far have they gotten?
I don't think they've gotten very far at all.
Okay.
So,
I don't know if you'd let us do like a video, maybe. I don't know how comfortable you were with that.
no, I kind of want you guys up in front of, stand up here and presenting rather than a video.
Yeah, let's jump with somebody over there.
Yeah, I think that'd still be easier. So you guys will pretty much be on your own, because Frank's changing shifts. Not next week, but I guess he's changing next week too, but he's basically gonna have to go to a day class with us.
David, is your number 237-8999?
Yeah. Sorry about that, Ron. I have a different date.
Okay, so, let's jump in here, get chapter 10 rolling. Like I said, we'll take a couple breaks along the way here. There is a lot of content in the chapter on motivation. It's going to break down a bunch of different theories, and they can get a little confusing, but they're more alike than they are dissimilar. So we're going to try to talk about each theory, but really kind of stay on track with what I think is important about motivation, and hopefully have some decent discussion along the way too. So, so they first jump into talking about intrinsic rewards versus extrinsic rewards. And in general, some people are wired to be motivated intrinsically on their own feelings they get inside of accomplishment, connected to something larger than myself. Those are intrinsic sort of rewards. And other people are a little bit more motivated through extrinsic rewards. So things where you are recognized for your productivity, whether it be a pay raise or even just like the parking spot for the month. Something that publicly recognizes you is sometimes more powerful for some people. When you guys think about just in that basic level of motivation, are you more intrinsically rewarded or extrinsically? Which is more important for you guys?
I'm extrinsic.
Okay, so you like,
I'm working to make money, so, I know that kind of sounds shallow, but
no,
I'm not hanging out for no reason. I got
Right.
kids, so.
yeah, that's cool. What else? Intrinsic?
I gotta say both.
Yeah, depending on the situation or the environment.
Depends on the situation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm a little bit more intrinsically motivated. I think it keeps me going a little bit longer, more sustained, if I'm kind of getting something out of it internally.
Absolutely.
If it's only an external thing, I seem to, want to drift off or not finish or, whatever. But we're going to dig into motivation a lot, because I have some pretty strong opinions about it as well. So pretty cool little graph of benefits here. We're going to talk about those more in a minute. Just different benefits, different rewards you can do. They're basically non-monetary that people can enjoy. So they're going to start you way back with this first philosophy of motivation, of management, calling it scientific management, where it's all just simply about what's the most efficient way to do the task. So they're not really worried about whether you like it, whether you're feeling rewarded, nothing. It's scientific management was just simply a first step at saying, look, there probably is a best way to do this. And it focused on, the rules of the work, the methods, how long it's going to take you. That's a lot of the early management philosophy stuff. So again, same sort of thing. Find out the best way to do it, and then obviously we've got to pay people. Connected to that, scientific management is what they're calling time motion studies, where they'll have people perform the job, almost like a laboratory. You'll perform the job, and I'll measure it, and we'll see how efficient option A is versus option B, and so on. Just trying to focus on early stages of just simply the way you go about doing it, and obviously we're going to get later motivational theories which are more robust than that.
That's, these first two subjects or topics, what have you, that's exactly what I'm doing inside right now.
Yeah.
Training, figuring out, like for a new model, what method, what standard word is gonna work out best, and each associate does it differently.
Yeah.
To a certain degree.
Yeah.
And then, we have a certain amount of time, they have a minute, 3 seconds that they have to get this done in.
Yeah.
So there's time involved, and do a time study.
Yeah, and then you also got to worry about like sustainability. So they could do it that way maybe for 2 hours, but could they do it for 8 hours? That sort of thing, and make sure they can hold up. So I think that's cool. Yeah, and that stuff is important. And obviously, especially with lean and all that, we don't want any waste and etc. It just is a very first step from a motivation standpoint. Obviously, it becomes demotivating if I'm doing wasted steps in my job. People start to go, man, this is dumb, So it needs to be efficient, but I think there's a lot more obviously to motivation that we'll get into here. Just some indications of stress. I think we all know what stress looks like for each of us. Just talking about the rules that UPS drivers have to go through, how detailed they can get. You guys are doing the same thing out there, just different jobs. So, okay, so here's one of the first theories. The Hawthorne effect is what you'll want to try to remember out of this. So what they did was they took a regular group of employees and called them the sample group, and then they were testing another group, and the group that was being experimented with, they were seeing if the light, the actual ceiling light of the factory, caused a change in productivity. Thinking, hey, if we make it more bright in here, people will be a little more awake, they're going to work a little harder, etc. And of course they did. What we also found is when they turned the lights down, they also worked harder. And so all the Hawthorne effect really produced was this feeling that if employees know they're being monitored, they are going to perform better, more efficiently than if they think they're not being monitored. And so that's all they really found with it. And so the whole level of supervision does matter, basically. So that's one. That again, they're going to go like 3 or 4 of these theories here. That's one of them. Next one is Maslow's theory, which probably gets the most press, I think, like in high schools and that sort of thing. And it's because it's got this little fancy pyramid, I think. So we probably have all seen this. Again, I don't think any one of these motivational theories is the one to hang your hat on and that sort of thing, but you can pull some really good stuff out of all of them to create your own motivational theory. So one of the things I do like about this Maslow's hierarchy is, these two are what we're all focused on initially, and psychological needs and safety needs. We need to eat, we need to be in shelter, we need to not be in a stressful environment, abusive environment, right? So those are the basic motivations right away is, look, we got to at least get established here and make sure we can survive. And once you get those done, then you start moving up into these other needs, which are a little more complex and they'll vary from one person to another. Your social needs is the idea of kind of feeling connected. So you start to become more motivated. Again, as you have these done and they're in the bag, now you start thinking about, I want to be connected, I want to be a part of something bigger than myself, and that sort of thing. And then you move up from it to esteem needs. We're starting to get into recognition now. So now all of a sudden, if I'm connected to something bigger myself, am I being recognized appropriately for what I do and my value? Do my peers look up to me? You know, those sorts of things. And then the final one, which I think is really powerful, is your self-actualization. Is just all about, am I becoming the best version of myself? And if I'm working towards that, that's my greatest level of motivation. And so I like all those. I don't know that they're exactly stepped like that. And we're going to go back to we're going to talk about Herzberg's some other theories here. They're going to separate a slide out. That's pretty cool too. But so that's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Herzberg, again, another theory. He's talking about, he's breaking, I think it's easier if you see the slide here, hygiene factors. There, this. So Herzberg is basically saying, you have what he's calling hygiene factors, which are over here. And they're things that will not cause you to be more motivated, the more present that they are, but can cause you to be demotivated. Okay, so your dissatisfaction with your job can be here if these aren't appropriately present, but having a bunch of this stuff won't additionally motivate you. This is then becomes what motivating factors are. So he calls it the two-factor theory. Okay, and so again, company policy, supervision, working conditions, coworkers, salary, status, job security. If those aren't all in line, if they aren't where you want them to be, you're going to have some level of dissatisfaction with your job. Okay? His theory is saying, but if even all these are present, you still may not have that much motivation to do a great job. Motivation is going to come from these things: the work itself. Am I being recognized? Am I actually accomplishing anything? Do I have some level of responsibility? And do I have the ability to grow and advance? So you understand what his theory is saying? We got to have these. They're important, because without them it might cause dissatisfaction, but it's really not going to cause anybody to run through a wall for me. These things are what are going to cause people to really get excited and highly motivated. What are your thoughts on that?
I always find it interesting how much salary doesn't play a factor in motivating people opposed to work environment.
Yeah.
What am I comfortable, like you said, advancement, growth, but achievement, things like that. But salary isn't as motivating what people would think.
No, you're exactly
very
right.
interesting.
Yeah, so if we get a chance, I may put at a minimum, I'll post this TED Talk out on motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, really good. He specifically goes after compensation. Dan Pink is this guy's name. And what his research had found is money is a motivator if the task that you're doing, first you have to have complete control over the task, and the task does not require conceptual thinking, problem solving. So if the task is very simple to do and I have control over it,
Mm-hmm.
if you hang extra money out for me now, I will actually work harder. But if you put, so he does these tests, and you put these, you put the same subjects into this test where it now requires conceptual thinking, we have to think outside the box and come up with a solution, they actually do worse the more you motivate them with money. And so,
More pressure
yeah, and they,
that dollar
exactly, and they can't,
the freedom.
yeah,
We touched base on a lot of this in our previous class.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, so I agree with you. I think it's money becomes a lazy man, lazy leaders sort of way of trying to motivate people. You know, same with punishment. You know, I think it's a lazy way of trying to get people to do what you want them to do. I think again, we're going to talk about equity theory in a minute. I think that one's really powerful when it comes to money, where people want to look around and they want to make sure that everyone's being paid in an equitable manner, meaning if this guy has more seniority or he knows more than I know or he has whatever and he makes more than me, that's okay. That's still fair to me. As long as everybody's paid in a fair way, that's always good too. But then I think a lot of people notice that inequity and that dissatisfies them as well, demotivates them as well. So we'll talk about that theory in a minute. But
I found myself being somewhat spiteful. And there's people that's been there longer, but I'm kind of like, I need to be challenged.
Yeah.
And there's certain people that know one job.
Yeah.
Opposed to I want to know every job there. And that's just kind of how, so I know all these jobs, and yeah, they've topped out, and so they make $5 more on the hour, but where's my compensation for knowing how to do essentially everything.
Yeah,
Because you're not encouraging me, yeah, you're paying for my school, but what about the individuals that's not going back to school? Where's
Yeah.
their incentive to learn and grow? Because the more we know as a unit, the more flexible, the more we can throw each other in different positions, the more we'll function, the better we'll function.
yeah, no, I totally agree with you, but I think what happens is, especially mature companies, they kind of have a culture of either recognizing, overemphasizing one characteristic, whether it be in this case loyalty. Well, the person's been here so long, so they should make more. And they're not emphasizing maybe what the current core values should be, which in your case might be saying like flexibility or adaptability should have some value. You know what I mean? And that's what happens. They get these established cultures and no one's kind of driving the boat, and they just kind of keep going with the same policies, and then people end up being dissatisfied and demotivated. It can be tough. Because I'm the same way you are. And when I first came out of graduate school, I was a telemarketer at this little truck driver training center. Man, I took every job in that whole building for the same reason. I just wanted to know more. You know what I mean?
Makes you more valuable.
Yeah, it makes you more valuable. You know what I mean? But I wasn't getting pay raises along the way either. But
Certainly.
but I wouldn't change it because I think you just become more employable. I've not seen this graph right here, and I like it. So I've taught motivational theory a lot, and I've not seen it stacked up like this. So this is that same pyramid we had. It's just taking the whole pyramid effect out. So it's stacking up from, and this is kind of saying the same thing, right? They're kind of saying these are, especially down here, job security. This is saying job security, working conditions, company policies. Okay, they're kind of matching those up over here with safety and psychological needs. Kind of saying, hey, look, are we safe? Can we show up a place and at least not have to worry about stuff? And do we have a paycheck so we can eat? And do we have a roof over our head? So they're kind of making those connections that yes, I need to have that stuff. And then here's starting to be some of your relationship with your peers, the whole social piece. And then now we're getting up into this esteem, recognition, status, and then up here self-actualization, my personal growth. So just kind of making a comparison there between the two. I want to jump back here real quick and look at, make sure we didn't miss anything on these. Yeah, so these are the hygiene factors. That's just, again, a term you might want to know, where they're not necessarily going to motivate someone, but they can add dissatisfaction to the job. Okay, yeah, so we've got all this. Just some tips on what you can do. Try to reinvigorate people. We're gonna get to well, we're actually heading right now, this theory X and theory Y. So the next theory that this Douglas McGregor proposed was a theory X and theory Y. And he's basically saying that there's kind of two camps, two approaches, two mindsets that managers will come from. And the theory X manager works from the mindset that people basically don't like to work, and that the way you're going to get them to work is to punish them, hold them accountable at a really high level. That workers prefer direction and being told what to do. So it's just kind of a theory on managers' approach. So he calls that a theory X. And then theory Y is he's saying then now this manager's coming at it from a different mindset, and this manager believes people actually do like to work. They do naturally want to do a good job. And so now it's about matching up the company goals with their personal goals, that they have the ability to handle responsibility. They don't have to be told what to do all the time. So just two different theories, okay? And then theory Z is kind of a separate deal where they just started to look at culture. So before we get into theory Z, let's go back to X and Y. And what are your guys' thoughts? Do you think people naturally want to do a good job, or do you think people naturally want to avoid work?
I take pride in what I do. I mean, I found myself when I need help with something, when I have equipment that isn't up to par, and I need to ask for help, I feel myself feeling vulnerable, dissatisfied. I like to do my job completely on my own, so there's no questions.
Yeah.
I've done this task, and not to be praised, but
Well, and even praising yourself internally though, right?
Sure.
Being like, man, I did a good job there.
Yeah.
That feels good, and I want to do a good job next time too.
Mhm.
So my question is, do you think majority of people are that way, or do you think the majority of the people are one that really had to kind of have a kind of a hammer hold over their head, and you know that
It's
sort of.
getting to like a generational thing. I mean, honestly, I don't know if I'm thinking too much into
No,
it.
because we're gonna get into generational stuff in a minute,
Old
but
school guys seem to just wanna work all the time, opposed to the younger generation might not be so prone to get up and go to a.
what do you guys think?
I agree with the latter response to a certain extent. I mean, I think it just depends on the situation, it depends on the person, it depends on, you know, the work environment. You know, a manager like that, if he's got a set work environment, you know, to punish people for their actions, you know, you create a, you know, just a certain atmosphere, managing people a certain way. So you may have somebody who has a different outlook on work coming in under this form of management and winds up, you know, his whole attitude about the work that he's doing changes.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So-
I mean, I look at this sort of management as a dark place, you know, like
Absolutely.
where you're just kind of keeping your head down, man. You're sliding in, you're like getting your stuff done and getting out.
Yeah.
You know.
Get fired.
Yeah. Dave, what do you think?
I like his idea, it's more generational.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I wrestle with that too. I saw a Facebook post, super cool quote, you know, going on about, you know, today's kids, you know, aren't as good as they used to be, and blah 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 blah, right? And the whole world's going to go to hell in a handbasket. And then the quote is like from Abraham Lincoln. You know, so it just makes me think like maybe this same concept, like as old people, we just start to think that young people aren't going to get it, and that whole thing has been reproducing itself over time forever, basically.
Doesn't it fall on us though, honestly, as parents, of these children? Like, I'll be the first to tell you, sometimes the Xbox is the best babysitter I've ever had.
Yeah.
For real though, technology it has a lot of
Yeah.
benefits, but then again, it gets me out of being a dad for 6 hours sometimes.
Yeah, my baby boy's a YouTube kid.
Yeah,
Like
oh, yeah.
he's the youngest of 4, and like, you know, my oldest would go when we had him and his little, you know, 2 or 3 year old. We'd take his toys and we'd go to like the bagel shop or whatever. And he'd sit there and play with his little toys for like 2 hours, you know, just hanging out with adults and all that, and go home and play with it. So he's playing with toys all the time. You know, my 4th came out, he'd never played with toys. He's playing with his big brothers and, you know, on digital stuff and, you know, running around playing basketball, but he never sat down and played with toys. You know, it's just, and so he's always on YouTube. I'm like, great. What do you learn how to kill people today? It's like, no, just some spear throwing, and you're like, oh, Lord.
Wait, so we got all this,
Yeah.
we got all this intelligence, and now you're going back to the 1800s.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, and we were joking the other day because, you know, we always, you know, we'll do the if it's an apocalypse, you know, who are you going to take? Well, we're killing Cooper first. That's my oldest. He's useless. Leo's like, you guys don't want to keep me around. I'm like, what? Like, you're slow. Like, you know, you eat so much. He's like, Dad, I've seen a lot of YouTube survival stuff. And I'm like, ooh, I bet you're right. I bet you do know some stuff. So,
Maybe like a person delegates.
Yeah.
Opposed to actually does. All right, that's what you guys gotta do.
yeah, so I personally, I believe that people are inherently want to do a good job. I think that, I think I'm a theory Y guy, not a theory X guy. I think people want to do a good job. I think the only reason that they end up not is something petty. They got mad. They're being resentful. They're being spiteful. They've been treated wrong by somebody else their whole life, and now they've kind of overreacted and gone one direction. I think just people in their own being want to do a good job, want to take pride in their work, and etc. So I think it's this kind of weird dance between, because then you also get managers that feel like if they aren't punishing or telling people what to do, that they aren't doing their job. And so then you get some, I guess you call them ineffective managers, who are going back to theory X just because that's all they know.
That's how they were raised. in
Yeah.
the company. They
Yeah.
talk about cultural norms.
Yeah,
I mean, today we understand leading is better than bossing.
yeah,
I mean, I tell you to do this, right? Get out there and lead. It motivates me more. Opposed
Yeah.
to you sit behind a desk and saying, "This is everything you did wrong."
yeah. And you think about like, I think it's fantastic that businesses are paying for you guys to go to school, and even the schools are teaching more leadership than they ever have. They're still not teaching it enough, in my opinion. It should be required in high school. It should be required everywhere. Because even if you don't come out to be a leader, you're gonna have to be a follower. And the more you know about leadership and following, the better off you're gonna be. But you get me on my sermon here, so I'll let that go for a minute. But I think it's great because I think, again, it's always kind of been, well, who got the leadership job? The guy who's been here longer? It's like, well, what if he didn't know how to do it? And it seems like, again, we're talking decades ago, but decades ago, that's how the guy got the job. Was he just did it, was here longer. It's like, okay, and then just because he's really good at the line or doing his job, doesn't mean he's gonna lead people well. It doesn't mean he knows this stuff. And yet, most businesses, well, we ain't gonna train him on that, that costs us money. We can't train him. And so I think it's awesome that they're actually spending some money to train you guys.
I agree with that, but at the same time, I gotta say that it's gotta be, the training has to be used appropriately and a follow-up plan needs to be put in place, because out here, they used to use the method of having people kind of voted in to leadership positions. If you had so many people, like on your line, refer you as a good leader, this guy would be a good team leader, or group leader, what have you. I think they just did this with team leaders. Anyway, they used to use that method. Now, they send them to team leader training school, okay, and that costs them a lot of money to do that. They pay them to go to school.
Yeah, I'm teaching one of those classes right now.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so then you get these guys in here that they've invested X amount of dollars in, and even if they are a horrible team leader, they are not doing anything about it because they've got so much invested in them.
Yeah.
I've seen several, years on end now, just continue to do a horrible job and not be held accountable.
Yeah.
Because they're afraid of losing their investment.
Yeah, I would, I don't disagree with that, but the absence of that, and I'm not an expert here, but what I'm learning is the absence of that approach with the team that they're taking with their team leaders and investing in them and putting them in class and all that. The absence of that is then what they have with the group leader approach, which is you gotta have a degree, and so we'll hire whoever we can get our hands on that has a degree and stick them in. They don't know our culture, they don't know what, they don't even know our factory necessarily.
Right.
And yet so they don't, that has problems too.
Absolutely.
So now I don't have invested in them, but I do, because what I have is really a lack of productivity while they try to come up to speed learning our environment. And oh, by the way, then I also probably made some people mad because they thought they were good enough to do the group lead job and yet don't have the degree or, whatever, to being overlooked for that.
Yeah. I don't disagree, I'm not disagreeing with the training aspect of things. I definitely think that, it needs to be done, but I think just in a different manner, maybe.
I think, here's what I was gonna go to your point. Let me see if this answers your point. I think and again, I'm not an expert, I've just been here for a year and a half or whatever, but the little bit I'm picking up, the solution for you is a higher level of accountability for these team leaders who have been through the training, I think is what I'm hearing you say. And what I'm saying is, my guess is the reason that doesn't exist is they don't have enough good people already. So it's a shortage of talent. And so now all of a sudden, it was kind of like me in the trucking world. If I saw 5 trucks sitting out there and you came and applied today, you're going to work.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm gonna try to kill myself trying to get you to be better and be more productive and not crash my truck. I'm gonna beg and borrow, and I'm gonna do everything I can to kind of coddle you along and try to get you better, simply because I don't have enough good people to choose from. And so I bet that's some of what's going on with team lead situation is they just don't have enough quality people coming through to be able to go, sorry, you need to go, or you need to step down, or whatever. And so then that's a challenge that they need to come up with, that's a big time, overarching problem, yeah.
I think there's a risk in any sort of promotion, but I think this gives you, if you look at it from stats, you're like, okay, before school, we did this. Now that we're paying for school, now it's like this. I bet the satisfactory rate is more opposed to prior to, like you were saying, where
Yeah.
people that are inside the company already show a level of dedication, already show loyalty. So we're looking at that, taking that into consideration. They're already showing they're going to be here.
Yeah.
They're invested in the company on some sort of emotional level.
Yeah.
So now that has to be, not everyone's gonna be a great leader.
Right.
I mean, that's not gonna happen. Not everyone,
Right.
everyone can show all the skills prior to, and you could just fail the job when you set your ass in there. It's just
Yeah.
not gonna happen.
I mean, I'm teaching this class now.
Terrible leader.
No, I'm just teaching this class now, to your point, Frank, that I wouldn't be ready to put all my money down on every one of those guys. There's a few that I think are really good, and there's a bunch that are in the middle, but there's probably a few that I'm like, I don't know if they'll even make it. But I think that's a more of an indication of the lack of total raw material they've got to work with than it is the program being broken. You know what I mean? So I think it's great. I think, again, especially in comparison to what other people are doing. You know, a lot of companies are just like, oh, you can say you can lead, and you wrote it down on a piece of paper and handed it to me? Awesome, you're hired. You're a shift supervisor, good luck. You're like, oh, man.
I think this would work.
Yeah, exactly. And they get out there, and their ego's so big, and, you know, then they start making people mad, and, you know, being a Theory X manager, and they don't really care about people because they're all puffed up themselves, you know, or whatever. It's just, there's so many cases where people just get kind of thrown in there. So all this Theory Z is talking about is looking at the same sort of analysis as the X and Y, but it's looking A and J based on cultural type. So these are all American sort of cultures over here, Japanese sort of cultures over here, and then kind of a modified version is Theory Z down the middle. And here's another side by side. Again, Theory X and Y and Z are my least favorite of all the ones we're going to cover, but I want to touch on them just because they'll probably be in your testing stuff. Goal setting theory. I do believe, am I a goal-driven person? I used to be. Not quite as much as I used to be, but what are some of the key things for goals to work for you personally? What do they need? What are some of the things they need to be present for them to be to function well?
In my personal,
Yeah, anything. Yeah, any goal you set.
I have to be honest with where I'm at.
Okay.
I have to be conscious and be realistic of where I'm at right now and where I want to go.
Okay.
You know,
So yeah, a lot of people will set goals without taking inventory where they're at right now. And I always use the analogy of you wouldn't set out to go to Chicago if you didn't know you were in Indianapolis already. Because you couldn't get to Chicago if you didn't know where you're at already. But we do with our personal goals all the time. I'm going to go there, and yet I don't have a correct inventory of where I'm at currently, which makes the whole path very difficult to execute. So I got to know where I'm at currently. What else?
Break it into small pieces.
Okay.
Large.
Okay, so if it is and in general, we need to point out, bigger the goal, the better. But the other key to goals is it has to be attainable. So you want it to be big, but if it is not attainable, it becomes a demotivator then. So it needs to be as big as you can get it, while also still thinking you can accomplish it. The other one that is really big with goal setting is the inclusion of the person who is going to be achieving or reaching for the goal. So a lot of times as a business, we'll get a bunch of bosses and we'll sit around and smoke cigars and come up with these great ideas, then we'll hand them down to the people, and they had no buy-in, they had no input, and they're going, whatever, wad that up, throw it out, because we can't get that done anyway. So inclusion of the person that's going to be achieving the goal is really critical, and then obviously feedback as you're heading that direction towards the goal. So goals can be very powerful. Management by objectives, just kind of a catchy little management philosophy. It's the same sort of thing that Dave was kind of touching on, is let's set our big organizational goals, but then we got to link each employee's goals to whatever piece they have a connection to. So if our large organizational goal is to, grow our customer base by 20%, and we figured out one of the ways to do that is to have people wait on the phone less to get to our call center. So now all of a sudden this goal for this little frontline worker might be make sure we have no calls in queue, because we're trying to meet this bigger goal of increasing our customers. So and then I think the bigger thing, I think this can get done pretty well. I think this is the piece that ends up getting missed. I think people are so busy in their jobs, and the managers / leaders are so busy in their jobs, that people don't take the time to go back and see, is that working? Are you doing okay? Do you have questions? Right? Because they've taught them once, or whatever, and they're putting this fire out over here, they're putting this fire out over here. They just never really get back to evaluate how that person's doing. And I think that's it's a component of the how busy everybody is. Let's take a quick break here. We'll solve this video here, and yeah, we're still almost halfway through. So But yeah, let's take a quick break and I'll change up the things so we don't lose all this content, hopefully.